Glad to have you back. You're watching TVC Breakfast, and our first focus this morning is the Niger Delta, looking at federal government's initiative bringing lasting peace to the particular region. And of course, we have with us in our Port Harcourt studio a National Publicity Secretary of Ijaw and National Congress, Victor Burubo. Thanks for staying with us still. Victor, you said we were watching and waiting to see how this will go. But it's been a while now that the Vice President, while acting and now back to being the Vice President, has been touring the region. How would you assess that so far? Has that in any way impacted upon the restiveness going on in that part of the divide?
Well, yes, I would say yes, there has been some impact. Because first of all, the volume or the range or the level of shooting and violence has gone down drastically. We don't have any particular parameters for measuring that. But of course, from reports and then from those of us who live in the area, we know there has been a reduction because both the people of the Niger Delta and the agitators have always had a sense of goodwill, a sense of balance. They always want to give peace a chance, and that, is the result of what we see these days, that the level of shooting and blowing up of pipelines has drastically reduced because the people, the young men in the creeks, have also listened to their elders, and they have also accepted the olive branch from the federal government. What remains now is for us to see some goodwill from the other end, which has never been the case in the past. Nigerian governments are notoriously deaf and dumb to the cries of their people in the Niger Delta. And if they had had a tendency of listening to the people from the past, we would not be in this mess. So far, we can see that, yes, there has been a response from the Niger Delta, the people of the Niger Delta, the young men in the creeks, and what we are waiting for and watching for, and I might add, praying for, is to see some goodwill from the federal government.
But don't you think that the Vice President's peace shuttles to the Niger Delta region is a strong indication that this government may not be deaf and dumb, after all, using your own expression? The 16-point demand made by by PANDEF, the Pan Niger Delta Forum, it does seem that this government is beginning to take seriously, respond seriously to some of the demands made. Don't you think so?
No. There is nothing this government has done or said so far that is different from what we have seen in the past. Beginning from the time of the former head of state, General Abdul Salam Abubakar, to the time of former President Olusegun Obasanjo, to the Yar'Adua era, to the Jonathan era, there has always been dialogue. There has always been some form of shuttle diplomacy, if I may call it that. But the thing that has been lacking is, first of all, goodwill on the part of the government, and then results. Because, as I have said, so far, the visit of the the Vice President, when he was acting President, what it has done is to douse tension, to reduce the intensity of violence. That has been achieved. Mm-hmm. But in terms of what the federal government will give to the people to bring, let me quote you now, lasting peace, we are yet to see anything. We are yet to see anything on the ground.
Okay, we'll take you up still on that right after
so that's where we are.
Yeah, just hold on a second. Let's bring some more facts to our viewers there concerning the Niger Delta region. The federal government has admitted that gunboat diplomacy has failed in settling the dispute in the Niger Delta region. So instead of moving men and ammunition to occupy the creeks, they introduced dialogue and other remedial measures to forge a partnership with the oil-bearing communities and fast-track development in the area.
Before Vice President Oshibajo's visit, the country has been experiencing increased resurgence of militancy in the Niger Delta region with attacks on crude oil products and gas pipelines. New militant groups sprang up, with each of them making fresh demands, many of which were not met by the government. Records have it that between January and November last year, that's 2016, the resurgence of militancy cost the nation more than 130 million barrels of oil valued at $4 billion, even at the base price of $30 per barrel.
Now, the fight is for a common cause: poor infrastructure, abandoned projects, and unedifying lack of development and access to basic amenities. But there are more worries: bad leadership and lack of proper management of projects leading to their abandonment. But Vice President Yemi Osinbajo's several trips to the Niger Delta region and dialogue has brought a ray of hope and rekindled confidence in the people that the Buhari government is really serious about turning around the fortunes of the Niger Delta region. So let's take a look at some of the changes that have been felt so far.
Noticeably, though, in the frigid relationships between locals and the federal government, relative peace has returned to the Niger Delta region. Bombings have stopped, and there are no more cases of pipeline vandalism, so much so that the NNPC recorded that the output has increased tremendously, really. So that's
so
a good
about
thing.
the normal 2.2 million barrels per day. Now, the takeoff of the controversial National Maritime University, Okoronkoko, in Baramatu Kingdom in Delta State, return of the lucrative oil pipeline protection contracts to militant leaders, and the overhaul of the presidential amnesty program, amongst many others. Burubo, now that you say that you're not really impressed by the action so far coming from this government, some of these achievements that we have reeled out, are you saying then that the peace so far achieved is not likely to be sustainable? Do you have such concerns?
Well, let me begin with the achievements.
Yes.
Everything mentioned so far is a drop in the ocean. It's just a drop in the ocean. The Vice President, when he came calling, talked about modular refineries. Yes, we have heard about the University in Okrenkoko and a lot of other things. But how many of our people are unemployed? How many people have been deprived of their livelihood because of environmental degradation? How many of them can't be employed by all these things that I mentioned? That's why I say it's a drop in the ocean. Apart from that, the underlying idea of the federal government of seeking peace so that oil can flow, for me, is infinitely saddening. I'm not blaming this particular federal government. When I say federal government, I mean all the governments in the past, plus this one. It is infinitely saddening that every time we talk about peace in the Niger Delta, that peace is equated with how many barrels of oil are flowing from the environment of the Niger Delta. That is very unfortunate. Now, there are a lot of people in the Niger Delta who have not taken up arms for whatsoever reason. Are they feeling the pinch? Yes, they are. Are they facing the difficulties like suit, environmental degradation, all sorts of things? Yes, they are. And nothing has been done about their case. All we do in this country is, one man causes some trouble in one corner of the Niger Delta, we say, okay, appease him, give him amnesty, build modular refineries for him. What about the teeming masses of our people who are not yet restive, who have not taken up arms, who do not think taking up arms is a solution to the problem? What plans does the federal government have to ensure that those people are catered for, especially the women folk? I'm happy the two people who are in the studio this morning are ladies. What happens to the women folk? They cannot go into illegal refining. They cannot go into militancy in the sense in which we know it. They cannot go into kidnapping. They cannot go into armed robbery. These are desperate means by which the young men are trying to solve the problem of poverty in the land. The women cannot do that. What about the women who takes care of their interests? So what we think should be a solution is, okay, the University in Okrenkoko, yes, modular refineries are coming. They haven't told us when or to what extent. Okay, that's also good. But these are immediate stopgap measures. There is no long-term measure. For instance, the PIB, nobody has talked about it. When the vice president came calling, we didn't talk about modular refineries. That was his idea. It was the idea of the federal government. We talked about the PIB bill. We talked about restructuring of this country. If our country is restructured and we have fiscal federalism, then naturally we'll clean up our own environment.
All right.
We'll build our modular refineries ourselves. We'll control our...
Okay, Victor, let me interrupt you. What you're reeling out now is the 16-point demand of Pandev. And the federal government says it's looking into that. Maybe we can pick those points one after the other. That of university, you agree with us. That was put forward by the federal government. Another point has to do with the exporting zone. You demanded for an exporting zone, and the government is looking into that. Shouldn't we even just say, okay, grateful for that, let's start with that, then we look into other areas?
Well, in the circumstances, I suppose we should be grateful. But when a government of a country does such things, the government is simply doing its duty. But we have to be grateful because, as I said earlier, our governments have been notoriously deaf to our needs and our cries and our desires. So, but let's also remind ourselves that in the past, we have had one palliative or the other. From Abdul Salam Abubakar's time, to Obasanjo's time, to Yar'Adua's time, to Jonathan's time, and even now. Well, the point I'm making is that the pattern has not changed. The tendency that, look, let us quickly do this or that to appease them, to draw more oil from the land has not changed. What we need is a long-term plan. So we are grateful for the small ones we have seen. But then, those ones won't last. They won't do anything for our people.
All right, Victor Burubo.
Ask for more.
Okay.
And it is not a good thing to respond only after there is violence in the land. Let us think ahead and do something and stave off that violence. That's the point I'm making. All
right, we do understand your point very clearly, Victor Burubo. Just hold on as we go on a break, and a reminder to our viewers on TVC Entertainment that you can continue with the show on TVC Nigeria on DSTV 418, Go TV 45, and Free TV 701.
Start time is 3:07, so let's continue the conversation there. Stay with us.
Right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast this Tuesday morning, and our first big story is the Niger Delta, the prospect for lasting peace. And our guest is all the way in Port Harcourt, is the National Publicity Secretary, Ijaw National Congress, Victor Burubo. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now, I mean, listening to you so far, one can safely say that you have doubts as to not just the motive, but the ability of this federal government to actually keep its promise to turn around the fortunes of the Niger Delta. But what would you say, for example, to the response from the Vice President that the IOCs, the international oil companies, should move their headquarters to the Niger Delta region, because after all, that's what would make sense. And secondly, that the modular refineries which you referred to earlier, that some of the people who have been involved in illegal refineries will actually be made stakeholders in this modular refineries. Is that not, a step in the right direction? Is that not long-lasting?
Yeah, thank you. The directive to the IOCs to move their headquarters to the Niger Delta is a master stroke. I will say that for the government, it's a very wonderful idea, and we hope it is implemented as quickly as possible, because for one, it gives our people a chance to be employed from whatever level to the other, and also it benefits the people in more ways than we can say here. But at least it takes away the tendency where somebody flies in from abroad, gets his contract papers in Abuja, goes to their headquarters in Lagos, transacts business, and then goes off without reaching the point at which his business is done. So to that extent, yes, it's a master stroke. As for the modular refineries, as I said also, it was the idea of the Vice President. We didn't ask for modular refineries. However, it's also a good idea if the intention for the modular refineries is that they will be built and the people involved in illegal refining now will be employed. But then the idea itself is good, but when you think back, when you speak to professionals, when you talk to the technical people, you find that it's like telling a villager you will take him to London. He doesn't know how you're going to get him an international passport. He doesn't know how you're going to get him a visa. And he doesn't know why he's going to London in the first place. Why am I saying this? The people who are involved in illegal refining are criminals. They have to be regarded, first of all, as criminals. Illegal refining is not part of the amnesty program.
But you know, if they are regarded, sorry if I may butt in here, if they're regarded as criminals, of course, understandably they should be. But there is a peculiar challenge with the Niger Delta region, and what this government may be trying to do is to actually go forward, and so that if you employed the expertise, the ingenuity of these young people who unfortunately found themselves on the wrong side of the divide, it may help bring about progress in the region, don't you think?
Is what I'm saying. When you make the announcement long before the thing is ready to take off, long before the program is ready to take off, you simply encourage other people to get involved. That's the point I'm making. We cannot continue this level of appeasement of crime. This particular case is a crime. This is not about anybody who finds himself in the wrong end of the divide. There is an amnesty program, especially here in Rivers State. The governor has started the implementation of an amnesty program that is local and state specific. And a lot of people are responding to it. The environment, if you know what it means to be in Port Harcourt first thing in the morning when you wake up. As I was coming to the studio, I told myself this is nighttime at dawn. And part of what is bringing this about is illegal refining. So when you say these people will be incorporated into the modular refineries, for me, the idea itself is good, but the implementation is what I'm quarreling about.
What should the implementation then be? What should the implementation be, Burubo? What should government do to these people then?
First of all, what is the time frame for bringing these refineries, the modular refineries? You don't go to the Shell and buy one off the Shell. You don't do that. That is one. Two, how many people are involved in this illegal refining? Are they registered? How many are they? And when these refineries come, how many of them can be employed? So if we're going to build a modular refinery for everybody who goes into illegal refining, what are we talking about? The idea is good, but for me it seems like a distraction.
All right, Victor.
Let us deal with the issues that really matter. This is an idea of the government.
Okay, let's stay with that.
This is an idea of the government. So, I mean, what are we talking about here?
Okay, Victor, let's stay with that idea of the government and link that to what we have with the amnesty program. A section of it, or an arm of the amnesty program, has to do with disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration. Because if you take arms away from those people, and they must be put back into the society, they must be integrated into the society. And looking at these modular refineries, wouldn't that be a fantastic way of getting them off the street to something more productive?
These people are not agitators. They are not fighting for the Niger Delta when they refine crude illegally. I want us to make a clear distinction on this. They are not agitators. They are not fighting for the Niger Delta. They are not speaking for the people. Having said that, if the government wants to bring modular refineries to employ them, fine. That is fine by me. The point I am making is, how long will this take? And if this matter is not treated immediately, are we somehow suggesting, or is the government suggesting somehow, that they can go on with their illegal refining activities until the modular refineries come? If they come in a year, or 2 years or 3 years from now, are we going to wait and continue to breathe in deadly air from their own activities.
All right.
The modular refineries come.
Okay, let me quickly take you back to
this wonderful idea came from.
All right, thank you, Victor. Let me quickly take you back to the IOC, the instruction by the federal government that headquarters be relocated to the Niger Delta. Some have said, okay, that may not be happening anytime soon until parastatals like the NNPC relocate to the Niger Delta. That way, they have to go to the Niger Delta anyway to do business with the NNPC. What's your take on that?
Fantastic idea, as I said. It's a masterstroke from the government. We applaud it. We are rejoicing over it because we are reasonable people. We can discern, we can separate the wheat from the chaff. This is wheat. There's no doubt about it. And we encourage the government to continue to follow this process. If it dialogues with us, then we'll be able to say some of the things we need. I'm not disparaging the town hall meetings. But
did you get my question? Victor, let me repeat myself. Victor, let me repeat myself. The postulation by the postulation by other experts.
I said the idea is good.
Yes, we get that. What I'm saying, another idea from another person is that if the NNPC won't relocate, not just the IOC now, if the NNPC will relocate to the Niger Delta, then the IOC may not follow suit. But if the NNPC relocates, then they are compelled to relocate to the Niger Delta.
The NNPC has to relocate. The NNPC, in terms of, every business associated with oil, is the federal government. Let's look at it that way. So the NNPC has to relocate. And if they do not relocate, it's the business of the federal government to compel them to relocate. Otherwise, this good and lot will be a wasted idea. So I agree with you to that extent. Yes, let the NNPC come. We hereby urge the NNPC to come relocate to the Niger Delta. We know there are logistic challenges here and there, but they went to Lagos in the first place. They can also return.
All right. Well, let's even touch on some of the other initiatives and plans that the federal government has in store for the Niger Delta. As at yesterday, Monday, we heard from the federal government that it plans to launch a peace and investment initiative in the region. What's your take on this as part of the long-lasting moves on the part of the FG to really change the narrative?
It's also a good idea, but so far all we have are ideas and ideas. So far so good. It's a good idea, but please, a lot of the time we would prefer for the federal government to speak directly with our people and let us say what we want. It helps when we are directly involved in what is done. Like the town hall meetings were good, but in some of the states, the atmosphere was so stuffy. Okay. Because maybe they have some form of Tom and Jerry politics. In some states, some people are talking about the PDP and the APC, which we do not care about. What we want is good governance. What we want is, a solution to the challenges in the Niger Delta.
All right.
So far all these ideas are good, but as much as possible, let the federal government use the communities and the people and the ethnic nationality organizations as a sounding board to know just how well these things can work. Because if you're going to give me some form of medicine, you need my cooperation to bring forward my arm for the shot. So I think to that extent, the federal government needs to do more.
All right, thank you very much. Victor Burubo joining us all the way from Port Harcourt, the National Publicity Secretary of the Jaw National Congress. Thank you so much for staying with us on the show and, of course, giving us your insights. We'll be talking more about the Niger Delta and the prospect for peace right after this. Stay with us. Lasting peace achievable in the Niger Delta region. What would it take to achieve that? The moves by the federal government, are those moves enough to actually accomplish this lasting peace in the region? And when we talk about peace, what do we really mean by peace in the Niger Delta region? Those are the many questions.
Yeah, what do we mean by peace in the Niger Delta region? It means for a communication expert, you go development communication in terms of peace.
Of course, those are the, it's one of the many questions we'll be directing at our guest this morning. Joining us is Presido Gomorai, right here in the studio. Good morning and thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Our guest that just left our Port Harcourt studio, yes, indeed, he said, look, all the ideas that government has, especially this government, are all good ideas on paper. Yeah. But it's another thing to actually actualize these ideas. Now, let me start from this particular issue that he raised just before we let him go, on the issue of allowing the people of the Niger Delta themselves determine what they really want. And government is saying, let me even just quote this one, FG's new approach to the Niger Delta to meet the specific needs of each state in the region, that is, state-focused plan, or what you might call a ring-fenced approach.
Like he rightly observed, the truth is this: if the federal government mean well, we've seen good start for now. I must be very honest. Some of us have been involved in it for quite some time now. The position of the vice president,
yes,
then acting, now vice, showed that there is genuine intention to address issue. First thing that comes to our mind is the demands of the Pan-Niger Delta PANDEF 16-point agenda. And we have observed that the government have taken it as part of a working material. We're thinking that they should go further and start implementing some of these issues. Like we had the vice president talk about oil producing companies relocating to oil producing
headquarters,
rather than staying outside the environment. I must be very honest. Some of us have been involved in it for quite some time now. The position of the vice president,
yes,
then acting, now vice, showed that there is genuine intention to address issue. First thing that comes to our mind is the demands of the Pan-Niger Delta PANDEF 16-point agenda. And we have observed that the government have taken it as part of a working material. We're thinking that they should go further and start implementing some of these issues. Like we had the vice president talk about oil producing companies relocating to oil producing
headquarters,
rather than staying outside the environment. Employ people outside the environment, you don't send people there. It will go a long way to engage the natives.
But then again, it's curious when you hear the IOCs like the SPDC and Total, for example, say that they've always been on ground anyway, that the issue does not even arise, that they should move to the Niger Delta region. What do you make of that?
That has been the problem. And it's unfortunate, they're not being sincere. If you have their operational headquarters back there, you don't need to come to Lagos to seek for employment. One, two, that's for professional jobs. Then the local ones even can be engaged in cleaning up exercises, clerical jobs.
But okay, in terms of job, there's always a quota system. There's always consideration given to people from the Niger Delta.
I'll just get back to.
So you don't need to be in the Niger Delta.
I watched a program yesterday.
Employ somebody from the Niger Delta.
The spokesman of the defense headquarters was being interviewed, and he was asked if appointments, positions, being shared the 6 geopolitical zone. He said yes, and luckily, your channel is not the channel that carries, so I cannot. The lady, they provided for the public watching the names of all the officers. And no name came from the southeast. And I know from my connection in the south-south, the names we saw there, nobody from south-south. It tells you, and then they asked him, he said, sometimes that is the language. The truth is this: if they are there on ground, the tendency is that people will now be engaged. And then you see the economic activities will now flow. Will
they now change their standards to accommodate people who they don't accommodate now? They have what they are looking out for.
Listen, I said we don't want to tell the truth.
Okay.
The most civilized, the most organized, or the understanding is not by anything, it's people from the South-South. We blend easily. We speak people's language. You go to the South-South, you hear every music, any music from Nigeria is played there. There are some part of this country where you cannot even hear music from a particular area. So don't even look at that from Niger Delta. They are miniature Nigeria, is Niger Delta. Miniature Nigeria. There is Hausa, the Gala people almost like that. Then you have the Igbos, Eka, Agbo, you have the George. So you cannot compare. Niger Delta is miniature Nigeria. And I think that's why some persons along the line try to deny the people what is due to them. If we have cocoa, and cocoa produce us Mapo Hall, Liberty Stadium, First Radio, First Television, I mean, we are thinking that with the oil, this is not owned by anybody. Government owns the oil.
But some would tell you that the narrative of the Niger Delta is replicated in other parts of the country.
How?
You can say the same for
mining.
the southeast.
Mining is different.
Northeast,
The condition in mining is different.
Okay,
to oil production. In the case of mining, the owner of a land had so much. Then you have anybody can do. But in case of oil, it's federal government, and then the IOCs. Then you talk about 13%. Sincerity has been the major problem.
Okay.
Good intentions, yes. I tell you, I've been privileged to be close to people in some of these organizations. NDDC, OMPADEC, then 13%. You see, what they tell us in the public, what you see in the public domain, given out by the Nigerian government is not what actually plays out.
All right,
That's
we'll
why
get
we have
to
NDDC being held so much by the federal government, because they don't disburse. They will just tell you so much trillion for NDDC, but they will release this much.
Of course, part of the 16-point demand of the PANDEF is the funding for NDDC. Yes. But let's bring in Foladele at this point. She's been waiting forever to let us know what the people are saying about this one. Good morning. How are you?
Niger Delta is a miniature Nigeria. I thought that was very interesting to hear. All right, so let's see what people are saying online. Moses Dangana says, the end justifies the means. Whatever it takes to foster peace in the Niger Delta, the federal government should adopt it. Oye Nkuzi says, what I care for is for the people of Zakibiam to live in peace, for environmental and social justice in the Niger Delta, and more. Julius Miller says, thanks, sir, and that's to at Prof. Shibanjo on Twitter, says, thanks, sir, for your effort to restore peace to Niger Delta, but community contractors are being denied in the peace process. Dr. Efa says, Niger Delta restiveness has quietened for some time now. They seem to have embraced peace and dialogue. And the last one here from Wasiu O, he says, I believe legalization of illegal refineries can restore peace in the Niger Delta. Modular refinery will assist Nigeria positively. Do you agree? I saw your hand gesticulations. But what did you want to say?
And some of the names are not even people from Niger Delta.
Yeah.
It speaks volume that people are now appreciating what we have been agitating for. The only thing we now do is to call on the boys to probably mellow down, and let's give the government a chance to put in place some of the good intentions. I don't know why, I keep saying it, because it's typical of you. I have a freedom of expression. I think I see the Vice President as an incarnation of Chief Obafemi. I work for Chief Obafemi as a youth leader. It means well for the people of Niger Delta. And I know my former governor, Bender State Governor, late Professor Ambrose Ali, the kind of ideas they had then is what we seek playing out. So we are praying that the government should go ahead, and then we'll probably go back to the boys and tell them, change your attitude towards the government and let's move this country forward.
If I got you correctly, you're saying that you think the president has a good vision for the Niger Delta.
President, yes, but we must, not only when we praise, because in Nigeria, when you praise, the next thing is that they go back to where they were.
Right.
So maintain the status quo. You look now, there's relative peace in the Niger Delta.
Yeah.
Relative peace. I was here and I explained the development when the Vice President, then acting, visited the Edo State. You see what happened in the hall? I don't know if you were watching, but you see, with the wisdom and the ability to handle the crowd, the boys were cowed down, asked to come and sit down. And
sorry, President, we're trying to wrap up this segment now, but before you came, the guest we had earlier said the love the farmer has for the fowl is for it to make more money.
Yes.
That the interest of the federal government in looking for peace at all in the Niger Delta is for that part to produce more oil so that the place is calm, they can make more money.
And then come out of recession.
Yes, come out of recession, and that's why the federal government is doing all it's doing right now, not because they have the interest of the people at hand.
That's the beauty of democracy. He has a right to his view. I have my right to my view. I think he's saying something very germane. But you know, some of us live outside home. and we're trying to broker peace. Sometimes you won't tell the man the truth now. You power him down to let him know to go ahead and do. Let the government go ahead and start implementing. You see how things will work. And it is truth. So much will come from federal government and a lot of things will come up. But
so it's like a win-win situation.
Yes,
the federal government will make more money and the people will benefit.
Yes, and then we have infrastructures. Okay. Like we want to see flyovers, we want to see crisscross of bridges, we want to see good roads.
But government is saying there has to be peace for all of these things to happen.
And the government too, as you are trying to say you want to see peace, you genuinely put on ground things that will make us to say, it's the way that will now caution ourselves. Yes. Hey, stop it. Government mean well for us. They say why? He says, look at this point, look at that point.
Okay. All right, Fola.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, Gomara, I will have to leave it there, really. I wish you had come in earlier, but that's how much time
you leave it there, or you're going to put it there, because if you leave it, it means we are forgetting. Sometimes you bring some...
All right, we'll come back to it some other time and see how far we've gone with the case of the Niger Delta region. Stay with us, there's more to come on TVC Breakfast right after this break.